My name is Sienna, and at 30 years old, I sat at a five-star restaurant in Boston, watching my younger sister prepare to marry the man who was supposed to be my husband. Penelope stole my fiancé Liam because she believed his tech startup had billion-dollar potential. What she did not know was that in a few short years, she would lose absolutely everything, while I ended up holding the very life she desperately tried to steal. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to sit quietly while toxic family members tried to tear you down. The clinking of crystal glasses echoed through the private dining room of one of Boston's most exclusive seafood restaurants. It was the rehearsal dinner for Penelope and Liam. The room was filled with Liam's supposed venture capitalist friends and my parents' high society country club acquaintances. The floral centerpieces alone probably cost more than my first car. I sat at a table near the back nursing a glass of sparkling water. As an M&A strategist, my entire career was built on analyzing risks, seeing through bad investments, and knowing exactly when to cut my losses. But sitting there surrounded by the scent of roasted garlic and expensive perfume, I realized the worst investment I had ever made was my loyalty to my own family. Liam and I had been engaged just 6 months ago. We met when he was still pitching low-level software ideas from our shared apartment. I paid our rent. I funded his initial business registration. I worked 80-hour weeks at a demanding financial firm to support us while he chased his grand visions. Then Penelope stepped in. My 28-year-old sister had always been our parents' golden child. She wanted whatever I had, and our parents Richard and Barbara always made sure she got it. When Liam started wearing tailored suits bought with my credit card and talking loudly about incoming millions, Penelope suddenly found him fascinating. The affair destroyed my engagement, but my parents demanded I keep quiet to avoid a public scandal. They practically forced me to attend this dinner to maintain the illusion of a happy, supportive family. I remembered growing up in our upscale Boston suburb, where Richard and Barbara measured success entirely by appearances. My mother had always criticized my practical pantsuits and long work hours, telling me that men did not marry women who worked harder than they did. When Penelope decided to pursue a lifestyle blog instead of a real career, they funded her every move, calling her a creative free spirit. When she set her sights on Liam, they saw it as a brilliant networking move. He had potential, and in their eyes, potential was the ultimate currency. The fact that I was the one financing his potential did not matter to them. To my parents, I was simply the rigid pragmatist holding him back. Penelope, with her carefully curated social media presence and boundless capacity for flattery, was the perfect accessory for a rising tech star. They had practically handed her the keys to my relationship. The room grew quiet as Penelope stood up at the head table. She was wearing a custom silk dress, looking every bit the triumphant bride. She tapped her silver spoon against her champagne flute, drawing everyone's attention. I watched my parents lean forward, beaming with pride. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Penelope began, her voice carrying clearly across the elegant room. "As we prepare for tomorrow, I want to take a special moment to thank someone very important, my sister Sienna." Every eye in the room turned toward my table. I kept my face completely neutral, forcing my breathing to remain steady. Penelope offered a sickly sweet smile that I knew all too well. "I really want to thank you for giving up Liam," she continued, her voice laced with mock sincerity. "Liam is a visionary with a billion-dollar tech startup potential. He needs a partner who understands the creative, chaotic process of building an empire. You are always just a bit too rigid, Sienna. Too corporate and safe to truly support a genius like him. It takes a special kind of woman to stand beside a man destined to change the world." A collective uncomfortable murmur rippled through the guests. I looked at my parents, expecting them to intervene to put a stop to this blatant public humiliation. Instead, my father Richard merely took a sip of his scotch, while my mother Barbara offered a tight, agreeable smile to the guests at her table. They were perfectly willing to let me be the sacrificial lamb on the altar of Penelope's ego, as long as it kept Liam's supposed future wealth in the family. They cared more about the optics of supporting a future tech billionaire than the dignity of their eldest daughter. Liam sat next to Penelope, looking incredibly smug. He adjusted his expensive watch, the very watch I had bought him for his 30th birthday, and nodded as if Penelope was reciting undeniable facts. He really believed his own hype, and Penelope was entirely captivated by the illusion of his potential. As Penelope finished her speech, the room erupted into polite applause. The venture capitalists Liam was desperately trying to impress raised their glasses, entirely oblivious to the stolen foundation this relationship was built upon. Penelope sat back down, leaning over to kiss Liam on the cheek, while casting a triumphant glance in my direction. She had won. She had the man, she had the family support, and she had the room full of wealthy investors. I sat there in the heavy silence, absorbing the betrayal. Any other person might have run out of the room crying. Any other sister might have screamed and caused the exact kind of dramatic scene my family expected from me. But my corporate training kicked in. I looked at the man who had cheated on me and the sister who had betrayed me. I saw two people building a castle on a foundation of sand. I knew Liam's business model better than he did. I knew the numbers did not add up, but I was not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I simply raised my glass of water in a silent, mocking toast and took a slow, deliberate sip, waiting for the night to unfold. The applause faded, replaced by the clatter of silver against fine china and the loud, obnoxious boasting of Liam's venture capitalist guests. I sat perfectly still as the extravagant multi-course meal dragged on. Penelope made sure the champagne never stopped flowing, ordering vintage bottles that I knew Richard and Barbara could not comfortably afford. My parents were keeping up appearances, acting like old money titans of industry, while I knew their mortgage was barely manageable. They were leveraging everything on the delusion that Liam was a golden ticket. As the final plates of decadent chocolate desserts were cleared away, the restaurant manager approached our table with a heavy leather folder. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The loud laughter from my father suddenly ceased. He opened the folder, his eyes widening for just a fraction of a second before his features hardened into a mask of calculated indifference. He closed it and passed it to my mother. Barbara did not even look at the number. She simply took the leather binding and slid it across the white linen tablecloth directly until it rested against my water glass. I looked down at the folder and then up at my parents. The table grew uncomfortably quiet. Even Penelope and Liam stopped their performative whispering to watch. I opened the cover. The total printed at the bottom was $15,000. It was a staggering amount for a single evening, a monument to their reckless need to impress strangers. I looked at my father, waiting for the punchline of a terrible joke. Instead, Richard adjusted his tie and spoke with a terrifyingly calm authority. "We think it is only fair that you cover this tonight, Sienna," he said, keeping his voice low enough not to alert the other tables, but sharp enough to cut. "Your sister is starting a new life, and Liam is pouring every asset he has into building his company. You, on the other hand, have no husband, no children, and absolutely no financial burdens." My mother leaned forward, resting her hand over mine, in a gesture that looked maternal to the outside world, but felt like a vice grip. "Consider it your wedding gift to them," she whispered, her eyes devoid of any warmth. "You failed to keep a man with his potential. Paying for this dinner is the least you can do to compensate for the embarrassment you caused us by letting him slip away. It is time you contributed to the family image instead of just sitting there judging everyone." I stared at the two people who were supposed to protect me. They were not asking for a favor. They were demanding a ransom. They wanted to strip me of my finances, just as they had stripped me of my relationship, ensuring I stayed beneath Penelope in every possible metric. Liam sat across the table, trying to hide a smug smirk behind his wine glass. He clearly loved this. He loved watching the woman who had supported him when he was a nobody being drained to fund his luxury charade. Penelope watched me with eager anticipation, waiting for me to crack, waiting for the tears or the angry outburst that would validate their narrative of me being unstable and bitter. I did not give them the satisfaction. The years I had spent analyzing hostile takeovers and corporate bankruptcies had taught me one vital lesson. Sometimes you have to pay a premium to liquidate a toxic asset. I reached into my designer handbag, a purchase I had made with my own hard-earned bonus, and pulled out my wallet. I slid a heavy metal black card from the slot and placed it deliberately onto the leather folder. My mother's eyes darted to the card. She recognized what it was and what it represented. It was not a card you get by being a rigid disappointment. It was a card you earn through relentless, undeniable success. The kind of success Liam was merely pretending to have. I signaled the manager who had been